Well, time for another silver update, and let's hope silver takes off just like this antique silver-colored crotch rocket from the bygone era. Um, I think that silver probably, and this is the part that I'm not sure of, but I think it's actually going to take off into record highs here pretty soon. Well, let's assume it does. If that happens in 2013, it's starting to be, you're getting into 2013 slightly, you're in January, February 2013. All signs point to a pullback in 2013 because China's having a hard landing, and I'm not sure how much longer our wonderful stock market, the Dow, is going to keep up its lofty heights. It's way too high. It's way too high. And I got to point out the obvious. A lot of things with the stock markets and the equities and the general equities and the banking system and all this type of stuff are all connected with insurance annuities. In other words, if the stock market goes down, you might have problems with all these insurance companies and all these payouts going out to these retirement funds and everything like that. It's all interconnected. So the government has to keep it up. Now, how long are they be able to keep it up? I don't know. It's a good question because obviously it's not going to go forever. And that's one reason people are going into physical silver. A very, very small minority of people are going into physical silver, but it's probably the smartest freaking thing you can do because when it comes right down to it, it's real assets that count. It's real productivity that counts. And I want to point out something else. Like today, silver's down a little bit, right? It was up a little bit this morning. It's down a little bit. I think the impetus is that it's going to go a hell of a lot higher here even very soon because nothing's really changed. Today, like maybe this might have brought this down a little bit from being up a little higher this morning. There was news that came out from Spain that the jobs data looks bad. They have more unemployment. Actually, in Spain, they got like a 50% unemployment amongst the young people. In other words, that's like Depression era stuff all the way. So, usually I find a solution for that type of stuff. If you look back in history, when there's a lot of unemployment amongst the youth, it's like they wind up going in uniform and fighting a war someplace. I mean, that's really what usually happens to me, It could be. Now, I want to point out something that's alternative to silver that maybe you should do a little bit. I realize that not a lot of people are doing this. There's very few people doing this. And I've been saying this before but haven't mentioned it for a while. I was buying a lowly nickel, the 5-cent nickel. It's been the same, unchanged since 1946. It's the same thing. The government was talking about changing what makes up the nickel because of the copper prices. And you can see right here, this is right off of coininflation.com. I'll post a link on it. It's a standard public site. It's 108% of the melt value is 108% of the 5 cents that the nickel's worth. So it's actually worth a little more. It's worth like almost 5.5 cents, right? Now, this may change because if you look here, like this, actually some of these values were higher before because copper was higher. Actually, this was up to 300%. This is the old pennies. The current pennies are at 55% because there's mostly zinc in them. But as QE keeps continuing and stuff, you pretty much have a can't-lose proposition. You probably should pick up some of these nickels and stuff here and there. And I've been forgetting to do them sometimes. They're kind of bulky, but it's like it's a can't-lose proposition because it's always worth a nickel, and that's all you paid for it. But at one point in time, they're going to take these out of circulation because if we're going to get this crazy inflation that a lot of people are predicting because of buying back 40 billion in mortgage-backed securities every month, forever, all the commodities are going to go up, and that means the nickel too, which is 75% copper. So, and just as a side note, the other material that the nickel actually is only 25% nickel, 75% copper. Copper is actually, of all the base metals, is in more short supply than anything. If you buy those copper rounds, you're actually getting ripped off, in my opinion. Okay, how's that? In my opinion, you're actually getting ripped off. Because if you look at the spot price of copper, versus what you're paying for an ounce of that stuff, an ounce of a bullion. They have to mint it. You see, a nickel, it cost them like $11 to make a nickel or something like it. It's some crazy number like that. But, I'm talking to melt value. You got a deal and a half. You're actually buying a nickel that's a fully minted coin that's below spot. And then nickel itself, most nickel in the world goes into stainless steel. So stainless steel actually right now is probably not that high because of construction being down throughout the world and in China. But when construction cycles start booming again, the nickel that goes, that's in the nickel itself, 25% nickel, that might be worth a lot more too because of demand for stainless steel, which usually is construction. So I want to point that out. You can really have a very good, bet there that you can't really lose that easily. Because it's always worth a nickel. I mean, what investment do you know that's 100% principal protected that you can own other than a nickel? That's the only thing I know. It's actually worth more than a nickel right now in melt value. You can't melt them down, but at one point in time when they take those out of circulation, they're going to probably be worth a lot more. So that's the way I look at it. Now, I saw a thing today. This guy's Sam Zell. You probably never heard of him. He's a multi-billionaire. He's up in the Chicago area. He owns the Chicago Tribune. And basically, I guess this is kind of related to silver because he talks about the economy and what's wrong with it and what's wrong with people. It's kind of interesting, his take on things. It's not bad, though. I semi-agree with him. They also nicknamed him the Grave Dancer. I don't know if you've heard that. You don't see that too much in publications. But I'm a little bit familiar with this guy in one way, indirectly. The Grave Dancer, they call him the Grave Dancer because what he used to do was go around and look for companies that were in trouble. Basically had bad balance sheets and bad income statements. But otherwise, actually, they had a viable product and they had the company underneath it was sound. It could be anything. And what he would do is he'd resurrect the company from the dead. So that's why they called him the Grave Dancer. He'd pick a company that was dead, resurrect it, do different things that he needed to be. Maybe there were certain areas that needed to be invested. There was one weak area, weak link in a chain, and he'd fix it. And then he'd sell it for a major profit. That's a lot how he made money, the Grave Dancer. Now, he's talking about, all this class warfare crap that's going on between the 1%. I don't like calling them the 1%. I call them the 1 basis point. Because the 1% even ain't that wealthy. It's the 1 basis point, the 100th of 1%. The people with 30 million or more, those kind of people are wealthy. Now, the 1 basis point, or what he calls them 1%, he's talking like, he says a lot of people today, they don't want to actually try to start a business or actually try to, get out there and do a venture, do or die. They basically want to be taken care of. And he's partly right in a lot of ways. There's a lot of that impetus to be like that. But, I can also state that I realize that the 1 basis point are some cold-blooded bastards, to tell you the truth. They really are. And, philanthropy doesn't really exist on the top. It's more show. That's really what it is. Philanthropy does not exist on the top. It's really all for show. Now, being that he's one of the basis point guys, I don't know. I don't really mind this guy because actually I read some of the things he talks about with investments and strategies. He makes a lot of sense. He's a guy that actually made his own money. He's different from him, but he's like of the same caliber as Jim Rogers and Mark Farber. He made his own money. He took risks. And he had to make it work. So, his advice is actually good in a lot of ways. But he talks about a lot of people don't really want to take the risks like the 1% do. The 1%, nobody gave the 1% something. And, I have to agree with that because, the 1%, think about it. Say, for instance, there was this revolution in this country, like the French Revolution of 1776 or something, right? 1779. And they had the guillotine, and they just got all these 1% criminals, and they got rid of them. Well, what would be the next step? Really, what it comes down to, the middle class would just have to roll up their sleeves and go to work and basically do what they need to do to produce things. So, you know, that's in a lot of ways he's right. He's right. It's not the 1%. It's not the whole problem. But you know, this is one angle I've been pushing. I think it's the bureaucracy is what's freaking killing the freaking free entrepreneur. It's like, you know, back in 1920. Let's go back, put the clock back a long ways. If you were like making some product out there and you needed some help, you got a building out there, you're manufacturing this, or you got a service product or whatever the hell it is, you got to hire somebody to, like, you know, take care of stuff in the office. You got to hire somebody, you know, to maybe help you make the products and help you with other things, right? Well, back then you just hire them. Hey, this is what I'm going to pay you, and this is it, right? Today, you got to put up with 50 million things. You got to, like, you know, health insurance, you know, coming up with the national health care. You know, you got, you know, the I-9s, the W-9s, you know, it's stuff with the Social Security. You got to figure out what the withholding. You have to have a payroll service. You know, maybe you want to, you know, people want to have pensions and stuff like that. You might have IRAs and stuff like that. You got safety requirements in the building. You know, coming up the stairs, it's got to be, you know, the stairs got to be this much. You got to have a railing. The railing has to be this height. You have to have handicap parking out in the front. Maybe you only got 3 parking spaces, right? One of them has to be handicapped. Does that help your business? Hell no. You know, that kind of garbage. You know, fire and safety. You got to have commercial liability. If you want a loan, it's like, forget about it. You freaking bastards won't loan you money for nothing, you know? And you got so much stuff you have to comply with for that loan. So this actually is what's killing the economy. I said this before, is the bureaucracy to the max. And you know, one area you can see where it goes on a lot in bureaucracy is in the military. You know, if you really get back to, like, the purpose of a business is to make money, right? It's not really to, like, do good for the world, basically. It's to make money. That's the purpose of a business. That's why, you know, sometimes you get I would have to say that the people on the top, the one basis point, they are pretty evil. They're pretty much predators. But pretty much at every level, everybody has that same idea. Why they go in business? To make money. Well, the problem is they can't do the job because it's a bureaucracy. You know, you still got the same kind of deal going on in the military. You got a major bureaucracy. You got golf courses in there left and right. You know, people playing golf, right? I mean, they got golf courses all over the place in every military base there is. But, you know, do they have rifle ranges available for, like, people who want to shoot a rifle, like actually want to do a little extra on a weekend because the military doesn't shoot a rifle that much? No, that's not available. That's not available. And I'm thinking to myself, you always think to yourself, what's the purpose of the military? To defend the nation. And if you go back to the old school purpose, it's, you know, to murder, rape, pillage, and plunder. You know, the military is designed to, like, kill people, destroy stuff, and break things. That's really what the hell it is. Exercise its will upon other nations by pure domination as dictated by whatever, you know, the politicians say that are elected by the people. In reality, that's what the hell it is. Nobody wants to hear that one. I'll probably get thumbs down in this, but I'm going to be freaking very honest about it. But you know, one problem I always saw with the military was political correctness. It's another thing. It's almost like stifles the businesses. The same thing that stifles business. Purpose in the military basically is to exercise its will over the enemy. And they do that by killing them and destroying their stuff. That's what they do. That's how they exercise their will. Now, within the military, like, you do have a lot of political correctness, which actually come up in the, I'd say, more so in the last 30 years or so, is women in the military. Now, this is a very taboo topic, what I'm going to say. But, you know, a general would never criticize the fact that there's women in the military. Now, I'm not saying it's because there's women, but, you know, if you look at the standards, they change. One of the things that all individual, and I know there's a lot of fat, dumpy guys in the military too, I'm not going to say that. But, you know, what I'm getting at is the bureaucracy and complying with different things that has actually killed the military and killed the business competitiveness of the United States. And what you have is, like, for instance, you know, physical requirements. If the military has a physical requirement for this, that a soldier or a Marine or sailor or an Air Force airman needs to be this, then that physical requirement should be the same through both sexes, either male or female. In other words, if the military and the Marine Corps says you have to do so many pull-ups, and to do 20 pull-ups is max, 18-mile run, 18-minute mile, 3-minute run, 3-mile run, and 80 sit-ups in 2 minutes, well, then that should be the standard for all. That should be the standard for all. And it's not. It's not. And logically speaking, why isn't it? Because it's political correctness. And this is one reason I have a beef with not just politicians, but people that are high up in green uniforms that are careerists. Well, actually, they can't say it, because if I said this as a general, I'd be done with, inside of a day, every single newspaper out there would be saying I said all this stuff. They would be. But if you think about it, what's the purpose of the military? It's to exercise its will over other nations by basically killing them, or destroying their military, one way or the other. It's not about bringing peace and love, despite what the hell they say. It's basically full force. I know, like, they'll say it's not really that. We're there on a peaceful mission, but that's BS, and we all know it. But this is the same kind of problem that we actually have in the business world in the United States, and the economics in the United States, and why the economy is falling apart. We have a major bureaucracy out there, major bureaucracy, and the only way to get around it basically is to ignore it. That's the way I look at it, to ignore it. As far as what Sam Zell says about education and stuff, I partly agree with him. He'll talk about education. He'll say that education has actually been going down in the United States, and that's true. If you look at this, I don't want to put the graph up here, but if you look at the graph, basically it's basically one big downhill, and it had one spike in it. It had one spike in education, like it was doing a lot better, but that was because they revised the SAT scores to make it so everybody could pass. So basically, our education in the United States has been going down further and further and further. So there goes the competitiveness. But this is one reason. You might find that the United States is actually going backwards in a lot of ways, because we're not looking at things in a real way or in an efficient way. And actually, this is the one reason all along is why you should even have silver, because it's like you're cutting out a lot of bullshit and a lot of bureaucracy. In other words, you don't need financial advisors and stuff like that to hold your money and take fees, because all these guys that work in these brokerage houses and brokerage firms and stuff like that, and anybody that has exchange traded funds, they're all making money off of you somehow or another, because you invested your money into them. When you just own silver or own gold or platinum or palladium, you bypass all that bullshit, which I consider total bureaucracy. And it really comes right down to it. We got so much intertwined in this big labyrinth of bullshit, it's going to take a lot to get out of it. And that's probably what's going to drive up the price of silver, is when people start realizing, like, for instance, if we see our stock markets go down, I just wonder what's going to happen with the insurance companies and the annuities. I bet you they sink too. They would have to. A lot of people thought no way in hell would AIG go down. Well, they did, didn't they? And people thought no way in hell that Bear Stearns would go down, right? They did, though, didn't they? Yeah, I know silver would go down along with that, but my estimations on this metal, and I'm going to try to play this very shrewdly, is I don't think the sky, as far as economically, is going to fall just yet. I think it's going to fall probably a lot. We're going to have some kind of major cataclysmic type problems in 2013. So, but before that happens, we're probably going to see these metals still creeping up. It might go up 10% every month, on top of another 10% every month, and we might see some serious gains before we have the next major pullback. But then after that, it's going to move up a lot further. But what I'm thinking is, if we have this next pullback in 2013, it's going to be massively global. In other words, China's going to pull back. China's going to have a hard landing. Europe's going to be in worse condition. The U.S. number is going to be looking bad. And you know what this always leads to? War. Competition over actual resources. Because despite the bullshit, the fluff, the paper, what it really comes down to is real assets, real hard assets, and that really counts. So, one thing I always kind of think about with our military, I want them to win. And it's like I don't agree with the policies that are in there. It's going to actually, our economy is going to depend greatly upon, and our nation's survival is actually going to depend greatly upon how well the American military does. If they clean house right away, we'll be sitting on a top for many years to go. And the only way to do that is by having the most efficient organization going. So, it's kind of like my personal opinion on this, but I realize that throughout not just investment world where you want to keep things simple, you got to go from point A to point B in the most efficient manner and not think about any kind of bureaucracy or political correctness. It's a matter of get the job done, and that's it. That's it. That's all that counts. The results count. The mission counts. That's it. That's all that counts. It's not what the hell, I hate bureaucrats, to tell you the truth. I think of bureaucrats as a food supply. And that's why I keep extra hot sauce on hand, because if I ever run out of food, I'm going to be cooking them guys, and females, or whatever the hell it is. I'm going to cook them. So, that's a mean thing to say, but, they piss me off, man. I don't know, maybe I won't cook them, but you know what I mean. They drive me crazy. Bureaucrats are what is killing the country more than anything. They are interfering with the mission. The mission is, if it's the military, it's to go kick the enemy's ass. If it's a business, it's to make money. It's to put that product out there that people need. That's how you make money. So, saving silver and also, saving gold. And that is one way to actually put some bureaucrats out of business. It's called the brokers, it's called the insurance people, all this kind of crap. You don't need these people. And I think Jim Rogers has probably hit the nail right on the head. Financial people are probably going to be in the worst area over the next 10 to 20 years. It's going to be like the farmers, and the ones that actually produce real goods are going to be the ones that are actually gleaming the most money. Because what do people need? They don't eat paper, they don't drive paper, they don't live in paper houses. They live in things that, require hard assets, and they use hard assets in their daily life. It's definitely not about paper. Paper's more guys. And if it represents something, the only reason it has worth is because it's backed by something real. So remember, that is why you save silver, and that is why you save gold. It's something real.